Hi folks, I'm Scott Giles and welcome to Saturday at 2:30. Every Saturday afternoon at 2:30 Central Time, I shoot up a short 5-10 minute video on some aspect of life coaching or the hypnotic arts and sciences. Today, I want to talk about tolerance, a quality that seems to be getting lost in a lot of our society today. Now, what do we mean by tolerance? Well, the definition from Random House Dictionary is a fair, objective, and permissive attitude towards those whose opinions, beliefs, practices, racial or ethnic origins differ from your own. It's the practice of applying that in social settings. What it comes down to is tolerance is all about how you treat the other person. Now, in philosophy, we talk about the other, meaning someone other than you or your in-group. And how you treat the other is something that's part of cognitive ethics when you study that. How do we respond to the other? Well, we can respond with a range of behaviors. We can tolerate someone who's different from us. We can we could try to convince them, we can argue with them, we can negotiate with them. But you see, there's a paradox about tolerance. Not everything is acceptable. So there are some things that we do not tolerate. For example, when, if a dictator is running a concentration camp, that's not acceptable. We're not going to tolerate that, because that is a fundamental violation of human rights and human values. Therefore, a lot of philosophers will also say that tolerance is really a flawed virtue, because you're accepting something that would really be better if you could overcome. So rather than tolerating another person, befriending them is better. Rather than just tolerating someone, understanding them is better. But if none of those are possible, tolerance, agreeing to live and let live, is a virtue, although not perhaps the one that we might hope for. Tolerance always implies that there is some sort of conflict going on, that there's a disagreement between two parties that somehow can't be negotiated. And so a decision is simply made not to struggle about it and to go forward in the absence of struggle. Now, that's typically going to produce a better result than going forward struggling. And in a pluralistic society, that's what we have to do. So tolerance, as a philosopher would put it, is a flawed virtue because it is an endpoint of a process that would be better if it had gone on. And if, instead of just tolerating each other, we were able to like each other or love each other or respect each other and so on. Except in those communities, and this is where I'm coming from, where diversity is actually regarded as something positive. That it isn't the goal to have just like-minded people around you. The goal is to have a richer brew, people with a range of views, opinions, and types around you, in the belief that out of that matrix of difference, there will come things that are more creative than what you could get if you only were with people that you weren't tolerating but agreed with. Now, this may in part come from my own upbringing. I fundamentally grew up in a communitarian community, and we accepted pretty much anyone who wanted to be with us, but there were rules. The rules were that you don't put yourself off on another person. Everyone has their own path, and you will respect the path of other people, even if you don't agree with it, within some broad guidelines. I mean, we wouldn't tolerate a pedophile or a criminal and so on. If we got to a place where we had to make a decision about what to do, we would vote. And the bylaw specified some votes were majority rule, Some votes required a supermajority, but whatever it was, we took a vote. And the rule was, once the vote was fairly taken, we all got behind it. It was considered completely unacceptable in that community to be in the minority and continue to try to push your opinion off on other people, to grumble in the background, to politic, to subvert. That would get you thrown out. So, as I come from a community that valued diversity, tolerance is essential. It isn't a flawed virtue. It's something we want to have because we want to have difference. We want to be engaged with people who are different from us because we believe that created creativity. Interestingly, in the history of religion, and I have studied religious anthropology, the Judeo-Christian scriptures actually support this. In the book of Exodus, it said, chapter 22, don't vex the stranger because you were strangers when you wandered in Egypt. So, don't beat up other people because they're different, because you were different and you wouldn't be here if other people didn't tolerate you. In the New Testament, we have the parable of the tares, that is, weeds and wheat grown together in a field, and we're said, let it go. At the end, at the ultimate end of time, God will figure out what's wheat and what are weeds, and God will sort that out. We don't have to. So tolerate people for who they are and trust to God, karma, social creativity, whatever, to settle up any balance, any scores. You don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to try to control people. Now, in our society today, I see just a tremendous amount of intolerance. Political partisanship, certainly racial prejudice as well, and lots of other attempts to draw hard lines between us and them. And this always bothers the heck out of me because it goes to my core value that we need to tolerate each other, even if we profoundly disagree, because out of that creative process that comes from that disagreement, we end up in a better place than if we had only associated with people who were like ourselves. As I often put this, reasonable people of goodwill can disagree with each other while remaining reasonable people of goodwill. And if we engage with each other, even if we don't convince each other, still the dialogue is valuable because the dialogue can produce understanding, even if it doesn't produce agreement. Now, I still disagree with you, but at least I understand where you're coming from, and I have some sense of that. And that's a better place to be than just, you're wrong. A couple of weeks ago, I found a photograph on Facebook, and it was a guy, apparently Phil Robertson, who was the patriarch in this TV show called Duck Dynasty. I don't know much about it. I've never watched the show. But there was a quotation interspersed above his picture, and I don't know if he actually said this, but I liked it so much I shared it to my timeline. It said, "Our culture has accepted two huge lies. The first is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them. The second is that if you love someone, that means you must agree with everything they believe or do. Both are nonsense. You don't have to compromise your convictions to be compassionate." I completely agree with that. But boy, I took a beating on Facebook. How could you quote something that this evil man said? He's a white supremacist and a racist and yada. Now, I have no idea if that's who he is. I have no idea if he even said the quotation, but I like the quotation. It's possible for us to accept difference and even desire it We don't have to try to change the other if our starting point is the belief that diversity brings us out in a better place than just uniformity. And I believe that. So that's the position I bring to this. It's the position I bring to my clientele. I don't agree with everything my clients say or believe. I do a lot of work with cancer care in my hypnotic practice, and cancer cuts across every socioeconomic and political line. I have people who are poor. I have people who are wealthy. I have people of every kind of political belief. It doesn't matter. I think I get a better understanding of humanity by having a diverse constituency in my client base, and so that's a positive good. In my ecclesiastical life, I'm a Unitarian Universalist clergyman. We don't insist that other people believe exactly the same as we do. We like the richer brew that comes from the disagreement and the dialogue. And I think that our whole society would be better off if, instead of trying to destroy the other or even convert the other, we could just be at a place where we appreciate the other for the value of their difference. And that's how I come out on a lot of the stuff that's going on now. Hey, thank you very much for your time and attention. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. And if you're catching it on Facebook, please like and share. I will be back next week with another short talk on some other aspect, and I appreciate your time and attention. Do well.